This is the Balanced Growth Show with Dr. Travis Perry, helping successful business professionals like you achieve balance in their lives.
Welcome to another episode of the Balanced Advisor Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Travis Perry. Today, we have John Black. John started in the industry in 1994 and has since grown into a boutique wealth management firm called J. Black Financial Group, who specializes in liquidity event planning. He is the founder and CEO, and he has some awesome stories about catching fish there in Southern Florida. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm a really big fan and really appreciate what you're doing and how you're helping advisors. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. We were able to talk a little bit in the pre-show about some business and personal life. And you guys know this is a show about balance. But before we get into balance and scaling and growing, tell us, John, how did you get into the industry? Where did you start? When did you start thinking, man, I need to be an advisor, and then eventually, even grow your own firm?
Yeah. So going way back, because it's a fairly unlikely story, if you will. I'm from a small town in Missouri, and it's about halfway in between Kansas City and Columbia. The name of the town, my hometown, is Slater. And when I was there, population was 2,500 people. It was a small farming community, a couple of factories, and a railroad depot. My family are farmers. And so my dad farmed, and actually both sets of grandparents lived and grew up on the farms. So farming was in our blood. I always had an interest in money, so I'm very frugal. And whenever I would get money or, for birthdays, Christmas, whatever, I wouldn't spend it, I would save it. And so I took it to the bank, and so I would save at the bank. But also I knew that at an early age that farming wasn't my thing. You could do everything right, and it rains for a month straight, or it doesn't rain for a month straight, and you're toast. And so that didn't really appeal that much to me. And because of the interest in money, I wanted to get into financial something. I didn't really know what. And I'm also a huge sports fan. So I remember watching Boston College play the Miami Hurricanes. It was a Hail Mary game. Doug Flutie throws the Hail Mary, and we beat the Hurricanes. So I got interested in Boston College. I wanted to go to a private school. I wanted to go east. I was a big Celtics fan back then, and applied to Boston College, and for whatever reason got in. I had no business getting in, but I got in. I think it was geographic diversity, I think is probably how I got in. But so I went there, I got a degree in economics, and I loved going to school there, but it wasn't where I wanted to settle. I wanted to come home. So after graduation, moved to Kansas City and got into this business. So Kansas City is an hour and a half away. It's the closest city to my hometown. So came here, got in the business, and grew it from there.
Oh, yeah. It's serendipity is what I'm hearing. There's a lot of exactly. Trial and error, and then some luck is what, I find a lot of humble, but also really successful business owners. That's exactly what they tell me. It's like, hey, I worked really hard, but there's some serendipity, some luck. In my definition growing up with my mom, luck is just when hard work and opportunity meet. And here you are. So that's awesome. Well,
it's also real quick. It's funny how I fell into this, right? So I have a degree in economics. So again, I'm 21, 22. I have no clue what I want to do or be. And I love sports, like I said. So I'm like, well, hey, maybe I could work for the Chiefs or the Royals. That'd be a really cool job, wouldn't it? Yeah, it's really cool for, 50 people a year or whatever, it's not a big pool. So I'm like, well, I guess I'll be an economist. So I go interview at the Federal Reserve in Kansas City, and they're like, well, you have to have a PhD. I'm like, well, I'm not going to get that. So then I'm like, well, I'll be a fund manager because at Boston College, one of their famous alums is Peter Lynch. So Fidelity Magellan, the manager there. And actually my senior year, he came on campus and spoke. I read the book, went up on Wall Street, and I'm like, I want to be that guy. So then I go interview at American Century, which is headquartered here. And they're like, you have a better chance of playing for the Royals than you do being a portfolio manager for us. And I'm like, I guess I won't do that. So then I'm like, well, I'll just be a stockbroker. You know, that's what we were back in those days. So I go interview at some of the wirehouses, and they're like, well, you have to have your 7. I'm like, I don't have that. So I'm like, what am I going to do? So then I just kind of fell into it, lucked in. And because my oldest daughter, she's 21, she's going to be a senior in college. And she's kind of freaking out about what she's going to do after she graduates. And like, don't worry about it. And she's like, how did you know you wanted to do what you do now then? I'm like, I didn't have a clue. I just kind of fell into it. So it's okay. It's serendipity, like you said, and you just fall into it and it works. And here I am.
Yeah, it's absolutely truth. So what would you say, you have a very interesting situation, John, where, and we talked about this in the pre-show and our condolences and our discussion there around your wife passing away from a rare and aggressive form of cancer. Really by some design, you had great work-life balance or good work-life balance, but also by default, again, in life, your wife has left your side about 3 years ago. So tell us, how has that really affected your perspective on balance?
Yeah, a lot. But I'll even take a step further back because throughout my career, I would say that I've been very balanced. Now, that said, it hasn't been a 50-50 equal thing. It might be 75-25 and then 25-75. And so I've kind of zigzagged back and forth. And I break this down between like the early years when kids came, when kids didn't need me as much, and then when my wife was diagnosed. So I'll talk kind of through those. But I think also it all starts with a philosophy. And my philosophy about having a balanced life, if you will, was formed at an early age. So I'm going to go back and talk a little bit about my dad, who was he's retired now, but he was a small business owner as a farmer. And so I learned incredible lessons from him. And being your own boss and how that works was incredible. Having a strong work ethic was incredible. And having flexibility was incredible. But I also learned, because he did work a lot and he wasn't always there. When I wanted to, go shoot hoops or play catch or something, he might have been working. And so I realized at an early age that I wanted to have that sort of career in life to where I was there for my family, for my children, for my wife. So that philosophy was shaped at an early age. And as I started my career, to be honest with you, it was a lot of work focus. I would be in the office until 10 o'clock. No kids, wasn't married. What else am I going to do other than get in trouble? So I may as well work and make money. So it was really focused a lot more on working, then get married, and it kind of balances out a little bit. And I do have to say that because I'm so frugal and I'm such a planner, I always wanted to save every single penny that came in. My wife was completely the opposite. I had gotten some advice from a client regarding finances. And he said, you know what you ought to do is actually have your wife handle the household finances. And that, she'll get better. And I'm like, okay, let's try it. Well, she would write checks. It was back when we wrote checks. And I would get all the notices that they bounced. And I'm like, what's going on? She goes, what are you talking about? I go, well, you're bouncing checks. There's not enough in the account. She goes, but I have checks. I'm like, that's not how this works. Just because you have checks in the checkbook, that doesn't mean you can write checks. So zero concept. But I'm really grateful for her perspective, because her perspective was, you might not be here forever. You might not make it to retirement. So let's live a little bit more today. So we really met in the middle. And we, traveled a ton, still travel a ton. And so really kind of balanced me out, having, the yin and yang together, complete opposites that came together and really worked out. So then we have our first daughter. And at that point, I said, you know what, I'm going to be around a lot. And so I was very present. I wanted to coach all their teams, which I did. So I've coached volleyball, I've coached basketball, I've coached soccer, probably 40 seasons all in. You put all that stuff together. We would have practices right after school at 3:00. Well, I'm leaving the office at 2:00 because I got to go home. I got to put a game plan together for practice, change, go to school, take kids home afterwards, have dinner. And so it was really focused on the girls. I have two daughters. I'd go to every school function, every parent-teacher conference at 1:00 on a Thursday. It didn't matter. I did all that stuff. And the game plan was to be present, to be there, so that, they had a really good relationship with their father. And that has actually served us really, really well. Then, so I'm going to kind of zigzag back. Then the game plan was, once the girls didn't need me around as much, so once they're like, okay, Dad, get out of here. We're women now. We're going to hang out with Mom more. So, and talk, girl stuff. I'm like, okay, that's the point where, what do I do then? Do I take up golf, which I didn't, or do I focus more on the business? So then I kind of amped up and focused more on the business. Got that built up, hired an executive coach, and that's worked really, really, really well. And then, about 5 years later, my wife is diagnosed with cancer, which then zigzagged me the other way to where from the day of diagnosis to when she passed away, it was 9 months to the day. And we went everywhere. We went to Mayo Clinic. We went to MD Anderson. We went to UC San Diego. We did all this research. So I didn't necessarily put the business on hold, but I focused on what was important that I could focus on, which really was our top clients. We segment our clients. I'm sure we all do, our A+ and A clients. I focused on them, and the team did everything else. And, if we're down in Houston at MD Anderson and, my wife is not feeling well and we're in the hotel and she's sleeping for 6 hours, I'm doing work, and I'm doing, obviously very meaningful, targeted work. And oddly enough, we had our best year ever. The year she passed away, we had our best year ever. And so it's really kind of gone back and forth, but pretty unique perspective on that.
Yeah, it brings me back thinking about my own father when he passed away. I remember going to Northwestern as a young financial advisor, and I wore that badge, best year ever. And it was like the worst year ever. But for whatever reason, because we had less time, I was more productive at work. When I was there, I was there. And when I was gone, I was with my family, and life was more precious. Like when you lose someone in life, and I believe we'll see him again. But when you lose someone to this life, your perspective changes. And that's what I'm hearing from you, is this very unique perspective where, you lose your wife in a period of 9 months, and it absolutely changes everything. Mm-hmm. As you've scaled and grown your business, what would you say your biggest struggle has been with trying to keep that sense of balance of now your daughters are grown and now your wife has passed on and it's really you. So this is also a unique perspective. What have you done to keep that balance?
Yeah. Great question. So, my youngest daughter is going to be a junior in high school. So she's still home, and I have a couple years left with her. And then my oldest one, like I said, is going to be a senior in college. And she goes to college in San Diego. So we're out there. I mean, I'm out that section, probably once a month or so. So out there a ton in that area. And so when she graduates, she's going to come home. She's going to live in Kansas City and work here and all that good stuff. So that actually is helping out a ton. And so I don't know where my youngest one is going to end up going to college. But, from that perspective, it's pretty easy to maintain the balance because, I'm focused so much on the girls. And, because I built the foundation, if you will, because I was there, I was present, and they know that I love them. They know that I care about them. It's not like, oh, mom passed away, so now dad steps in. That wasn't the thing whatsoever. And what's also unique is they have really excelled. So they have done really, really well in their relationships, in their sports, in their academics, and it's really a unique story, and that everybody is just moving up. But it's really focusing on the family first, business second. As far as struggles that we have, it's human capital. I mean, that is the number one thing. If I could hire 5 people tomorrow, 5 lead advisors, we would just take off like crazy. But it's so hard to find people right now. So that's really our biggest challenge, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hear this so much. It's from advisors that they could just, delegate more, grow with advisors is one of the biggest issues that they're facing right now. We did a whole webinar on this, which is on our website on the vlog, travisperry.com/vlog. And you'll see a whole webinar breakdown. I've done some podcasting on this with Humans Being Resources, which they joined me on that webinar. It's a hard thing. It really is. You've got to be very strategic and competitive. What do you see in the industry, John, as some of the biggest issues that other advisors face, that they struggle with balance or they struggle with growing and keeping their balance?
Yeah. And real quick before I answer that, I wanted to go back to the perspective. You're talking about like from a perspective standpoint. My perspective changed dramatically once my wife was diagnosed in regards to new business, because we're always hustling, trying to get new business and new clients and all of that. And the attitude changed. Hey, nothing else in the world is more important than what I'm dealing with right now with my wife, my soulmate. And if you want to take action and do business with us, that's awesome. But if you don't, I don't really care. It doesn't matter. I could care less. I'm fighting the biggest battle that we've ever fought. And this is a side note. So you can do business with me, not do business with me, could care less. And it was almost like clients felt that. And they're like, wow, like you actually care about us. Like you're not doing this just to get a new client or get our account. And they're like, we like that. We are attracted to that. And I tell people that still today. I'm like, do it, don't do it. Doesn't matter to me. I'm fine. This is your life. You're the boss. You do what you want to do. However, if I were you in your shoes, this is what I would do. And if it makes sense, great. If it doesn't, fine. My family's going to be just fine financially. So that was the first thing I'd say. The other thing is as far as on the challenges, right? So I'd say a couple things as far as challenges on having a balanced practice, balanced life, being a balanced advisor. The first thing I would say is not having a philosophy about it. So I think that if you were to, as an advisor, if you went into a room, shut the door, and just thought about what you wanted. So one of the best books I ever read, which I'm sure everybody has, is Start With Why, Simon Sinek. And I did that. And so I did that after my wife passed away. And, and then she passed away September of 19. So literally 6 months later, we're dealing with the pandemic and shutdowns and just all this crazy stuff. And so One of the best things I did was I don't like to read books so much, but I can listen to them. So I have an Audible account, and so I'm downloading books, and that's one of the great ones I read. And so, what we did is we came up with, or I should say, that for the business, our why, but also personally, our why. And so I would say that number one is to have a philosophy about it. Think about what you really want, what you want your life to look like. And I don't mean make a lot of money or buy big houses. I mean, I'm talking about well-rounded and balanced. So that'd be the first thing. Second thing, that's a huge challenge, is a lot of people, advisors, compare themselves to other advisors. So I think it was Theodore Roosevelt said that comparison is the thief of joy. So comparing ourselves to others, you know what? Don't do it. But we are in a very competitive business, and so we do that. I'm very competitive. I like to battle. But you have to kind of put that aside and think about what you really, really want and what's important to you. Yeah,
well said. I've heard that quote many times, and well said. We continue this comparison. It's going to stifle our own growth. It's natural to want to know where we're at, right? Where are we on the map?
Yep.
How many hours till we get here? What are we going to do? When we get to this destination, like you want to know where you're at, where you're going. But constantly comparing ourselves to others who are going that perceived similar direction, they may be going in the opposite direction. Yeah, they're in our industry, but you don't know the workings of their business. It's just like comparing parenting, comparing just about anything. Like we could go social media, the social comparison, capital of the universe is social media. I feel you on that. I think a lot of advisors feel you on this. What would you say, maybe just to round off some advice, John? You've been there, you've done that, you bought the t-shirt, you've had great balance, you've been growing your business. What would you give advice to advisors who are, looking for advice on how to grow and scale while keeping your balance?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the, a couple of things come to mind, but first of all, I'd say, I think one of the great unspoken or unrecognized benefits of our business is that we get to learn from our clients. There is the Zen proverb. It takes a wise man to learn from his mistakes, but an even wiser man to learn from others. So we get to see what our clients do. We see what works and what doesn't work. And so I learn a lot from our clients, and really what doesn't work is actually more important, I think, than what does work. So don't forget about that opportunity to learn from our clients. And then also, there was a study, I'm sure everybody has seen it, about as far as regrets that people, they're on their deathbed, what are your top regrets? And I don't know if it was number 1 or 2 or whatever it was, but it was up there. It was one of the top 3, I'm pretty sure. And it was, they wish that they would have worked less. They did not say, I wish I would have worked more. I heard that when I was early in the business. And again, that formed and shaped my philosophy and what I wanted to do with the business. So I would say, again, keep perspective and realize that life is precious. You never know when it's going to end. And when we do plans for our clients, and we do all the modeling and say, okay, you're going to be okay, you're going to have this much left over, blah, 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 all this good stuff. I say, the one thing I can guarantee you is this plan is wrong. It ain't going to work out like this. In my plan, I didn't have my wife passing away at age 49. So it ain't going to look like this, but we can do our best. And that's what you do.
Thanks, John. Appreciate your perspective, giving back to the industry, being willing to spend some time with us, really make time for us here at the Balanced Advisor podcast. You guys, this is great advice, a perspective that we truly need to take into account, because likely this will never happen to us. But looking from your perspective and how you've been able to grow and really keep your balance, be there for your kids. You're a great example, John. And I know a lot of advisors like you. but I know more that need to learn from you. And so thank you for sharing. And what you've done today has been monumental. So thanks, John. If you enjoyed this, like, share, subscribe, and share this message to an advisor who needs this today. Thanks again.